In the spring of 1564, Stratford-upon-Avon was marking its doors with red crosses. Bubonic plague had arrived from London, threading inward along the wool trade routes that fed the town's modest prosperity. Somewhere inside a timbered house on Henley Street, John Shakespeare, glover, wool dealer, and recently elected alderman, watched a newborn son take his first breath. 3 days later, he carried the boy to Holy Trinity Church. The register entry is terse, Gullielmus Filius Johannes Shakespeare. April 26. That is all we know for certain. We do not know when Shakespeare was born. The church baptized infants quickly in the 16th century, waiting risked the child dying unbaptized, which was a theological catastrophe the era treated as worse than plague itself. So parents rushed their newborns to the font within days of birth. The tradition that Shakespeare arrived on April 23, St. George's Day, England's patron saint, is almost certainly a romantic invention applied much later. 3 days before the baptism, perhaps. Perhaps not. That summer, plague killed roughly 1 in 5 Stratfordians. The parish burial records fill across 1564, neighbor after neighbor, children especially. John Shakespeare paid a shilling toward relief for those hit hardest. His son would grow up in a town that had inhaled mortality at close quarters, where empty lots and boarded houses were ordinary landmarks. It is not nothing, when you consider that the man who would write more eloquently about death than almost anyone in the English language spent his childhood here. John Shakespeare rose through Stratford's civic ranks with the confidence of a man who believed he belonged higher. By 1568 he was High Bailiff, the town's chief officer, equivalent to mayor. Then something went wrong. He stopped attending council meetings, borrowed against property, refused to appear in public, and eventually withdrew from civic life entirely. The cause remains unknown. His son William, somewhere between 8 and 15 during those years, watched his father's world quietly collapse. What Shakespeare did receive was the King's New School on Church Street, free to the sons of burgesses, which John still technically was. 6 days a week from dawn, taught by Oxford men. Latin grammar from Lilly's Manual, rhetoric from Cicero, tragedy from Seneca, transformation and excess from Ovid's Metamorphoses. The curriculum was relentless. It was also, in retrospect, everything a playwright needed, language bent into argument, and stories bent into catastrophe. Then 7 years go dark. Between 1585, when twins Hamnet and Judith were baptized in the same Holy Trinity font, and 1592, when a bitter London pamphleteer attacked him as an upstart crow beautifying himself with other men's feathers, we have nothing. No letters, no court records, no eyewitnesses. He simply appears in London, already skilled enough at the trade to make powerful enemies. Every theory about those missing years is speculation wearing the costume of scholarship. The baptism register from April 26, 1564 still rests in the archives of Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon. The ink has faded, but the line is legible, Gullielmus Filius Johannes Shakespeare. A scribe's routine notation for an ordinary child in an ordinary plague year. The child would write Hamlet, Lear, and Macbeth, and vanish so completely from the historical record between cradle and stage that 4 centuries later, scholars are still arguing about the man behind the name. The plague year survives. The birth date does not. Strip it down and here is what actually survives: a plague year, a father's quiet collapse, a curriculum brutal enough to build a playwright, and 1 line of fading ink in a parish register. The romantic details, the saint's day birthday, the lost years neatly explained, those are inventions. What's real is the shape of it, a child who grew up inside mortality, inside diminishment, inside a language being bent into argument every morning before the sun was fully up. The historical record doesn't connect the dots. It just hands us the endpoints and leaves everything in between to us. What strikes us isn't the missing years, it's how badly we need them filled. Every theory about where Shakespeare went between 1585 and 1592 is a test of what we think genius requires: the right suffering, the right education, the right origin story. We keep reaching for a clean line from Plague Town to Globe Theatre because the alternative is uncomfortable. The alternative is that the record is just gone, that greatness doesn't leave the trail we expect, and that 4 centuries of scholarship might be the most elaborate way humans have ever found to avoid sitting with uncertainty. So we'll ask it plainly, if the man who wrote most searchingly about what it means to be human left almost no trace of his own, what does that actually tell us about how well any of us can be known?